Welcome to this explainer. So picture this, it's 2026, and the globe is currently grappling with this highly volatile US-Iran conflict. It's a situation that is just incredibly fraught with geopolitical complexity. But out of this severe crisis, we've seen this totally unexpected global peacemaker emerge. And that peacemaker is Pakistan. Today we're going to unpack exactly how this happened, but more importantly, we're going to explore the deep paradox right at the heart of Pakistan's newfound diplomatic glory. We'll be using some really sharp analysis from a recent piece in Dawn by author and journalist Zahid Hussain to guide us through all of this. In our increasingly fractured world order, the illegal use of military force and the bypassing of international laws have made conflict resolution incredibly difficult. And the source material notes this was exactly the case with the US-Israel war on Iran. But here's the thing, no matter how chaotic a conflict gets, warring parties ultimately need a mediator. Someone has to facilitate an end to the fighting, right? Well, Pakistan stepped right into that void. And you might be wondering, why them? Basically, they were ideally positioned. They hold close relations with both the United States and Iran, and crucially, they weren't directly or indirectly involved in the fighting themselves. Pulling these two massive adversaries to the negotiating table, that was an incredible diplomatic feat. It's literally brought Pakistan this huge, sudden surge of international acclaim. Because of this massive diplomatic triumph, there's suddenly a lot of chatter about Pakistan stepping into a new role on the world stage. Specifically, people keep throwing around this term, middle power. But what does that actually mean in plain English? Basically, a middle power is a state that possesses enough influence and clout to play an important role in international affairs without actually being a dominant world power like the US or China. But, and here is the absolutely crucial point, so I really want you to focus on this, true middle power status relies on two pillars. It requires diplomatic standing, yes, but it also relies on hard economic strength. You absolutely need both of those things to hold that position sustainably over time.
So that brings us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? Does Pakistan actually fit this definition of a middle power? Look, it's a feel-good moment for the country right now, no doubt about it. The international applause is super loud, but we really have to ask ourselves, is this prominent new position actually sustainable? Or is this just a fleeting moment of glory? One that's kind of masking a much more fragile reality beneath the surface.
The contrast here is just stark. On the one hand, you've got these undeniable international strengths. We're talking a vital geostrategic position, a formidable military force with nuclear power status, and immense leverage right now as a trusted mediator between the US and Iran. That is some serious global clout. But peel back the curtain and you find some really deep domestic vulnerabilities. The source highlights a remarkably weak economy, severe internal security threats, and a heavy, ongoing reliance on foreign aid. In fact, the author warns that while the country was busy reveling in its newfound diplomatic glory, these massive domestic vulnerabilities were being completely overlooked.
To really put that economic vulnerability into perspective for a second, just try to picture a sudden $3.5 billion gap in your finances. Yeah, pretty terrifying. Right in the very middle of Pakistan's critical peace mediation efforts, literally while they were working to resolve one of the most consequential conflicts in recent history, the country was hit with a sudden massive economic emergency. The United Arab Emirates actually withdrew its $3.5 billion deposit from Pakistan's state bank. Just like that, $3.5 billion gone. The crisis was so severe that Pakistan actually had to rely on Saudi Arabia to swoop in and rescue them.
And honestly, the economy wasn't the only thing unraveling. Exactly when the country was acting as this global peacemaker, a massive military standoff was brewing right on the Afghan border. At the very same time, violent militancy was seeing a resurgence in two strategically located provinces, and, like we just mentioned, the government was entirely reliant on Saudi Arabia to fix that immediate economic crisis. So think about it. You have a nation mediating global peace on the outside while facing profound security and economic instability on the inside. The paradox here literally could not be more evident.
Now, if you know the region well, you might be thinking to yourself, wait, haven't we seen this before? And you know what? You'd be right. History is practically echoing here. Pakistan has frequently been thrust into the international limelight, primarily because of its geostrategic location. Back in the 1980s, it was the frontline state for the Soviet-Afghan War. Post 9/11, it was the frontline state for the two-decade-long U.S. war in Afghanistan. And now, here we are in 2026, and it's center stage for the U.S.-Iran conflict. History is just repeating itself almost perfectly.
But we have to ask, what is the actual cost of constantly being in that limelight? The source material outlines this really dangerous repeating cycle. Basically, it starts when the country acts as a frontline ally or mediator in a major global conflict, which immediately triggers this massive flow of external financial and military aid. Sounds good, right? But here is exactly where it goes wrong. Flush with all that external cash and international praise, critical domestic economic and social reforms, they just get entirely ignored. And inevitably, once the dust settles, this lack of reform leads to strengthened authoritarian forces and even greater political and economic instability. The author points out that Pakistan is kind of failing to learn from its own history here, once again congratulating itself for global appreciation while its structural problems just grow worse at home.
And, that international appreciation comes with its own unique set of risks. The Dawn article notes a pretty distinct complication. Donald Trump, who initiated the conflict, has actually been effusive in his praise of Pakistan. The author makes a really practical diplomatic point here. They explain that leaning into praise from the very person who launched the war, especially a leader known for his ever-changing stances, well, it doesn't really bode well for the country's image. In fact, continuously highlighting this praise risks entirely undermining Pakistan's hard-won position as a credible, neutral peace broker.
Okay, so this brings us to another pretty dangerous proposition that's floating around. Because of their success in mediating, there's actually talk now of Pakistan taking on a permanent role as a net security provider in the region post-conflict. The source warns strongly against this. Why? Because aspiring to be the region's policeman risks severely overstretching Pakistan's already strained defense capabilities. Honestly, given the massive internal security threats we talked about and an economy that's basically on life support, aspiring to be the Middle East policeman is the absolute last thing the state should be doing right now.
Instead of looking outward for new security roles, Pakistan really desperately needs to look inward. Because the economic fallout of the very war they're mediating, it's coming for them. Let's just trace this ripple effect for a second. Global conflict naturally disrupts energy markets, and as a net importer of energy, Pakistan gets hit directly by skyrocketing global energy prices, which instantly triggers massive domestic inflation. The result? Even more of the domestic population gets pushed below the poverty line. So, while the diplomatic elites might be taking a victory lap, the everyday citizen is left bracing for a really severe economic hit.
So, what exactly is the path forward here? Well, the author concludes with this famous quote from Deng Xiaoping, "Hide your strength and bide your time." I mean, it's basically the ultimate advice for any nation that truly wants to achieve middle power status. The big lesson here is that true influence doesn't come from fleeting diplomatic headlines or from overstretching your military. It comes from focusing entirely, almost obsessively, on building a strong domestic economy and establishing political stability first. Because really, only when those fundamentals at home are rock solid can a nation truly step onto the world stage and actually hold its ground.
Which leaves us with this final, pretty provocative thought. Will Pakistan actually heed the lessons of its own history? Will it take this crucial moment to finally look inward and do the hard, let's face it, unglamorous work of building domestic, economic, and political strength? Or will it be blinded once again by the fleeting glory of international diplomacy, only to find itself weaker when that spotlight inevitably fades? It's a massive question, and it's one that's going to define the future of the region for sure. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. We'll see you next time.